Yo! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World. I'm your host, as always, Kane Sims. And what a nice little video that was. I thought I didn't have a video prepared to go live. And it turns out there's just a video in this platform already made for me. How is that for AI? Not that it was AI generated, it was just a standard video that was there. Anyway, hello, welcome to VUX World. This is going to be an epic episode. As always, I'm just back from Florida. I was at the Core Conversations event last week. It was a kind of like customer, employee, prospect event by Core AI in Florida. Very well done, I must say. Lots of people there, over 300 attendees there. I was hosting the event. I was doing the emceeing, the comparing, so to speak, and very good time. And Florida is absolutely lovely. Definitely recommend it if you ever are around. And if you are also around in a couple of weeks' time, not next week, but the week after, we will be doing a webinar with Wisdom AI. And this is going to be all about chatbot and conversational AI analytics. It's called Into the Black Hole. Very cryptic. The metrics that matter for measuring chatbot performance. And it's timely because we did the Edinburgh Chatbot Summit. We did a VUX World track at the Edinburgh Chatbot Summit. And every single question I was getting asked was, how do you measure the effectiveness of a chatbot? How do you measure the effectiveness of conversational AI? And this webinar is going to get at the heart of that. You're going to learn exactly what to measure, why to measure it, how to go about setting up the measurements. You're going to learn a little bit more about Wisdom AI as well and their analytics tool. And so if you are free on the week after next, I believe it is. Should have had the dates lined up, really, shouldn't I? It's not next week. Oh, it is next week. It's the 8th of June. It's the 8th of June at 5 p.m. GMT. So if you are free, then you can head to VUX.world and there's a little tab that says events. Click on that and you can sign up and register there. If you would like to go straight to the webpage, you can go to VUX.world/into-the-black-hole. A little bit like Morse code now, wasn't it? Hello, stop. Welcome to VUX World. Stop. And also, we have the Unparsed conference coming up. If you haven't yet booked your ticket for that, this is the world's first conversation design conference. It's happening in London. It's organized by VUX World and LabWorks. And you can save 50% on your tickets right now if you go to unparsedconf.com, UNPARSED.com. And you can use the promo code VUX World. You'll save 50%. We have all kinds of speakers there from the conversational AI community. Some of the world's leading conversation designers, Rebecca Evanhoe, Lisa Foxton, Breck, the voice bot Kinsella is going to be there with an exclusive report to share with you as well, all about the conversational design industry. So do go to unparsedconf.com and register there. All right. Now then, without further ado, let's welcome on today's guests. We have, I was going to say hat trick. It's not quite hat trick, actually. It's Rana's second time on the podcast, CEO of Behavioral Signals, Rana Gujral. Rana, welcome back to VUX World.
Hi, Kane. Thanks for having me yet again.
You're very welcome. Coming equipped with a microphone this time. I like your style. And we also have Anu Sachdeva, who's got a very what's the word? Impactful title, Global Head of Consumer and Commercial Banking Service Lines and Solutions at Genpact. Anu, welcome to VUX World.
Thank you very much, Ken. I'm super excited. And next time when I come in for my second time, I'll bring my blue microphone as well.
Yeah, yes, that would be good. I mean, you've got some blue behind you, which is nice. So we are looking incredibly colourful today, which is good. And yeah, welcome to your debut on VUX World.
Thank you.
Cool. So maybe we should kick off. People, if you've heard the previous episode that we did with yourself, Rana, some of the diehard fans may well have caught that one, which was absolutely epic, climbing into exactly what behavioral signals is and how it works. I would say if you want to deep dive into emotion AI and behavioral signals, definitely go back and check that episode out. But for those that haven't checked that episode out, Rana, maybe you can give us a kick off by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about behavioral signals.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we are a deep learning company, which is building advanced models of extracting intelligence from a conversation or a dialogue. And our specific focus is, as a company, is around extracting intelligence from the acoustics of a conversation, right? So to better understand that in a conversation, there are really two elements, primary elements. One, first is the content, the spoken word, or what is being said. And then there is the acoustics of a conversation, such as the pitch and tonal variance, prosody, intonations, etc., or how something is being said. And so we have been focused on this specific aspect of science called behavioral signal processing, and we focus on the latter. We extract a variety of intelligence from the acoustics. And we built a product which we call AI-mediated conversations, and that builds profiles of customers and call center agents based on past audio interactions by analyzing the nonverbal cues. And then these profiles are fed into a predictive model to determine which agent should be paired with a specific customer in the future so that a specific desired outcome is achieved. And it just automatically matches each customer to the best suited employee or the best suited agent using various aspects of emotional, behavioral AI, and behavioral signal processing. And you then create a situation where two people get together who have a natural propensity for a rapport. And then they tend to have a great conversation on all the KPIs that the industry cares about, whether that's CX KPIs like, NPS or better experience, average handle time, to reducing that, to improving the first call resolution, to the actual outcomes, which is improving sales and improving collections. Everything gets impacted. So that's in a nutshell what we do. Obviously, happy to tell you more about that.
Nice, thank you very much. And sometimes you might want to have, you might want to pair people who might have different conversational styles. So I'm thinking, if you want to reduce average handle time, you don't really want someone who is like me, who's just really long-winded and overly verbose and just doesn't stop talking. And the agent is just long-winded and overly verbose and doesn't stop talking. They'll be there forever. No, I'm joking. No, that's cool. That's cool. And definitely we got into a huge, a great conversation about the ins and outs of that, as I said on the last episode that we did together. We'll definitely get into some of that in this conversation because I think it's absolutely relevant. But before we do that, Anu, maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what you do and a bit more about Genpact.
Absolutely, thank you. My name is Anu Sachdeva, and I'm as Kane just gave my very long-winded title, but in simple words, I lead our services and our solutions and practice in our financial services vertical. And I'll tell you real quick about Genpact for all the listeners and audience who do not know about us. We are a professional services firm with about 100,000 plus employees across 30 plus countries, and all with a single-minded focus of delivering transformation and innovation for our end customers. And we do that by bringing in data, by bringing in analytics, and by bringing in some unique solutions and technologies similar to one of those, what Rana was talking about, and drive the end outcome for our customers. So it's all about, creating and building those insights using some of the benchmarks that we have had expertise in, and leveraging that to drive action for our customers. And a little less known fact about Genpact is actually we have several of thousands of our team members who are deeply focused in contact center. So we do deliver a lot of our customer experience, drive outcomes through these teams, and would love to talk more about that, on how we are making that change happen in the world.
Perfect. And so is Genpact a BPO? Is it a system integrator, or is it a bit of both? Like, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I would call ourselves as an organization who brings in data and analytics into operations and create business impact. So we call ourselves business integrators.
Okay, business integrators. Nice one. I like it. I like the style. All right. So in recent months, the world seems to have gone crazy over ChatGPT and those kind of things. It feels as though AI is kind of it's either hitting the mainstream, or it's definitely going through another wave of hype, so to speak. I know, Rana, you mentioned there that what you have is deep learning technology, and obviously it's not working necessarily on the words that are spoken, it's working on the acoustics and the way that someone's speaking. But generally speaking, it's still natural language processing of sorts. So I'm wondering whether you can just share a little bit of your thoughts in terms of, and Anu will get your perspective as well afterwards, in terms of what have you noticed about the market in the last 6 months? Has your interest in your solutions kind of gone up, and how are you kind of thinking about the way things are as far as people's interest in AI and services like yours, and how that's been affected over the last 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, certainly when we were talking about sort of like what's happening in the industry right now, in specific terms related to buying patterns and then AI, it's a fascinating intersection, right? It's an incredibly powerful tool that is revolutionizing the customer engagement in many ways, and we're leveraging this in a unique way, right? So instead of focusing on just text and data, because we do have the ability to process multiple modalities and fuse that into one cohesive set of insights. But there are these sort of essential elements that have been largely ignored in the NLP spectrum. And, the NLP space has been around for a long time, and we've had a lot of cool developments in this arena. But for the most part, if you kind of just sort of look at the spectrum today, and Anu definitely is expert in that as well. I mean, you look at the various implementations of speech analytics and sentiment AI. For the most part, everything is still really largely ASR based, and you're taking that audio, converting that into words, and then parsing the words for meaning, which is relevant, but it's also limiting. I mean, you're losing a lot of insights. You're leaving a lot of insights on the table, and so when we focus on the tone, by analyzing the tone and the nonverbal cues, we can understand more than just what is being said. And this then gives businesses an edge, allowing them to gauge various deeper aspects of customer intent and emotion, ultimately leading to more insightful and personalized interactions. And so imagine, knowing whether a customer is likely to buy or not buy based on their tonal patterns. And that's what we're making happen right now. So I think it's a game changer, and the industry is realizing it. It's just a start. I think there's some fascinating implementations coming our way.
And what are your perspectives, Anu? Have you noticed a kind of some sort of shift within your customer base and the market generally over the last kind of 6 months or so? What's your perspectives?
So absolutely. Look, I think the shift has been very, very clear, and we are seeing that across industries. So as Genpact, we look across several industry verticals, whether it's financial services or manufacturing or high tech. And I think what we are seeing from our customer buying pattern is, earlier it used to be all about cost. And I'm bubbling it up a little bit more than just, the conversational AI or Gen AI. I'm talking more larger, bigger patterns as well. And clearly, when the shift was more about, hey, now that I need to shift more into digital, and that shift from digital is showing very clearly that all was focused on cost, but not on the intent of the customer, which is what was hard to capture. And that's really has now become forefront in every conversations we have with our customers. They are very keen to now explore and see, hey, rather than pushing the customer to digital interface, why are we not capturing the intent? Why would we not look at the preference? And that brings about the larger aspects of capturing those insights, connecting the dots across various different silos that a customer touches the organization, and really building those insights to leveraging that to whether it's an intent of sale or if it's intent to explore more products for that customer. So we are seeing a very gradual shift, actually a big one for us all across different industries too.
Interesting. And a lot of the attention around AI has been on chat over the last so long, and even before ChatGPT and that kind of kicked off the next wave of hype. Even before that, kind of my observations was that most kind of businesses were focusing on chat over voice. Voice is obviously harder, if you want to automate voice conversations, it's a lot harder. And there's one school of thought is that voice is going nowhere, and the contact center, voice as a channel, that's going to be around forever and is kind of always required. Another school of thought is that more self-service channels on the digital front, and more optimized websites, more optimized conversational AI solutions, and a growing population of people who perhaps prefer not to speak to people. The other sentiment is that the voice traction is going down. I wonder whether I could get both of your perspectives on, broadly speaking, at a kind of macro sort of level, is the volume and traffic in the contact center increasing, decreasing, and how does that kind of either change or affect both of your strategies? Maybe Rana will stick. We'll stick with you, Rana. We'll go to you after Anu.
Sure. I mean, is voice going away? I think quite the contrary, right? I mean, so while the text-based communication and AI have had a significant focus in the industry, the importance of voice is being rediscovered. And you'd seen that, very, very, I'd say, in a prevalent manner during this the COVID years, and there was this emphasized focus on speaking with an individual, and you saw the amount of sort of focus and energy in investments in the call center space, specifically related to voice conversation. So, there's so much valuable information in it hidden in a voice, and with the advent of various sort of voice assistants and voice-based technologies, we're witnessing a kind of a voice revolution. So I think it's sort of quite the opposite. And what you're seeing is there's a variety of new products, and new companies are tapping into this potential. And we can, focus on these sort of elements of a conversation, specifically acoustics, and derive a wealth of insights. So I don't think necessarily it's going away. I think it's gaining momentum. Voice is a very, I'd say, intrinsic, fundamental way that humans communicate, and it's the most natural way of communication. It's the most sort of primal, intrinsic way, and as a result, we'd be communicating with a lot of things around us, including non-humans, machines, and TVs and others, with our voice. And it's just that the experience has been somewhat broken, right? So one of the things that what I sort of like to sort of point out is that, when we saw the advent of voice assistants, I mean, there was this promise that these are going to be our conversational partners, right? So you have these assistants, and you could actually, I guess, use them as a real conversational agent. But that promise hasn't quite been materialized, right? And so we certainly are talking to the assistants to do things for us. I mean, we're telling them to do X, Y, Z, either buy something, or pull up something, or do a search result, or play a certain audio. But having a conversation is a much higher bar, and that's why that result has been quite mediocre, right? So, for example, and we talked about this last time in a pod as well, is let's say if there's a conversation happening, and Alexa or Google Home is asking you if you'd like to do something or not, and you respond back with a very sarcastic sure. Well, the voice assistant has no ability to understand if you really mean that or not. It's going to take that literally and proceed on with doing so. And there ends the potential of a dialogue or a conversation, right? And so in order to actually have a conversation like we're having, our brains are processing a lot more than just the basic aspects of NLP and NLU, which is understanding the language and processing it and speaking it in the same way. And certainly you have the ability to process the context, but it's also processing the emotional and the behavioral state. And whether and then you push it to the next level, the aspects of cognitive AI, which is sort of you're trying to get into potential intent of the participant, which is, do you actually mean it, or do you not mean it? How do you really feel about it? All of that goes into crafting my response, and that is then meaningful for you as a participant, in that dialogue. And that's how you converse, and that's how you actually have a back and forth interaction. And so now that it's possible, right? So previously it wasn't possible, right? So now that it's possible, you're going to see really amazing interactions come in, where you're interacting with your voice assistant, and it not only understands what you're saying, but how you're saying and how you're feeling and your intent, or whether you mean it or not. And then it could provide a much more informed response. And so I'd say we're up for some really fun surprises in the interactions that we're going to see for ourselves.
And we're going to have more as well, isn't it? You've got voice happening on the web. You've got WebRTC with the potential to connect more kind of voice conversations in new kind of channels and environments where they weren't previously. Anu, what about yourself? What's your observations been in terms of the either increase or decrease in voice as a channel?
No, absolutely. And I'm going to build up on what Rana just mentioned. And I'm of the same opinion that no, voice is not going anywhere. And I keep, hearing and seeing some of the reports which come in. I saw Gartner predicting the agent labor cost, going down by $80 billion by 2026, owing to the conversational AI advent now. Look, I think in my view, what we are seeing and what will likely happen is the demarcation between the automation and human assistance. I think that's probably will be far more defined. Uh, what we are seeing across industries is that simpler tasks will go to chat or will get automated. More complex, more nuanced will come into voice. And that is likely the trend which will continue in our view. And actually, it's a great opportunity, in my view, for organizations to differentiate even more using voice, because more complex queries, more nuanced queries will now give an organization opportunity to build upon their products and be far more explicit in what they are selling or what they are talking, through their customer channels. So we think that complex queries now will have a far better way for to be handled through voice. And I think more importantly, it'll also be industry driven. For example, insurance, healthcare, some of the regulated industries or financial services, even for that matter, there will be a need for the voice interaction to stay intact, because uh, those would need a special handling and more nuanced way of addressing customers' need. And ultimately, we think it's all going to be more about how you personalize and how you customize the interaction, because that's really going to be the crux of what the experience is going to be driven by. More and more insights you have on the customer, the better the customer will be served, because ultimately that's the value which organizations want to drive through these customer interactions.
Nice, nice. I want to give a quick shout out to some of the people tuning in. We've got Milan, who says this is a very interesting topic. Excited to learn more. Usually, I'd bring them up, but for some reason, the comments are not coming through in this piece of software. So I'm on LinkedIn, going old school. Shout out also to Fleur. What a great initiative, she says. Zainab, who's saying looking forward to hearing from Rana and Anu on this topic. Martin Jan, shout out to Martin. I met Martin last week actually. He says he's looking forward to hearing more. So we've got a few people tuning in. If you do have some questions for Anu and Rana, please do stick them in the chat there, either on LinkedIn or YouTube, and we will do our best to put those questions to the folks. And so, obviously, Rana, Anu, Genpact, Behavioral Signals, there is some partnership going on, some partnership activity. Tell us a bit more about that. Like, what does that entail, and how are you both been working together? Maybe Rana, you can kick us off, and we'll hear from Anu after. Sorry, Rana. Did I say Anu first? Let's go with Anu then. Tell us more about the Genpact and Behavioral Signals partnership, Anu.
I can kick off, and maybe Rana, you can jump in, and I can give you a quick introduction on how as Genpact we bring in some of the newer technologies. So we run a fantastic program. It's called Project Runway, and that's a program to bring some of the newer technologies which are existing and which are new for our customers. Ultimately, what we look at is how can we get and deliver better value for our end customers. And through that journey, we got to know obviously Rana and Behavioral Signals, and this fits in very, very well in our entire suite of services. And as Rana explained, how we define what Behavioral Signals brings to the table is what we call as our Cura tone of analytics, service, which essentially by evaluating the tone, how can you better create more insights, and we bring it together with some of our other services, wrap our analytics, wrap our technology, wrap our digital services, so that we could deliver to end customers. And we went through interesting exercise over the past 6 months. We had through that journey, we had some of our customers which are banks, financial institutions, also take a demo of the tool. And clearly we got good feedback. And that's how we brought behavioral signals into the Project Runway journey. And super excited about this partnership, Rana.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I echo everything that Anu just said. Give you a little bit more perspective. I mean, our partnership with Genpact is, really all about sort of harnessing the power of voice in business communications, and what we're combining our technology with Genpact's deep industry expertise and process knowledge. And we're trying to make the customer agent interactions more efficient and more effective, and largely initially sort of focusing on the financial institutions, but really sort of going broad from that. And the partnerships rooted in collaboration and shared goals. I mean, the Genpact brings to the table their deep industry experience and a vast customer base, and we contribute to that element, our pioneering AI technology. But together, by sort of focusing on the various aspects of emotional AI and behavioral AI, and we're really looking at sort of building this sort of unique set of experiences into the current contact center setup. And I must say, it's been a fascinating experience working with Genpact. We've worked with a lot of partners in the past, and Genpact stands out in many ways. Haven't really sort of come across the deep sort of combination of both the process expertise and technical expertise in one partner. And I think we've learned a lot from that interaction itself. And so we're super excited, and just sort of barely scratching the surface. There's some amazing things that we're looking to do together.
Nice. That sounds good. And so we might have touched on this last time, but it's always, I think, worth bringing it up, given that the title of this episode is Tone of Voice, AI, and its impact on customer experience. So how do you quantify the impact that tone of voice AI does have on customer experience? What kind of things do you use to say that worked, that was a good conversation, this one worked, that one perhaps didn't? Like, and then a higher level than that, the value that it's bringing to the business. Rana, you alluded to some things earlier around like average handle time reduction, stuff like that. Like, how do you pin that on the tone of voice AI? I wonder if you can share a little bit about what impact does it have, and how do you measure it, quantify it?
Right. And so let me take a step back into the sort of the behind the scenes on why it's even relevant to pair the right people. Right. So let's take like a simple example from our daily lives. Right. So we've all been in two situations. Situation one is we're having a very tense adversarial discussion with someone. Maybe we're trying to negotiate something. Maybe we're trying to get a point across, whatever that might be. And it's not going our way, and we walk out of that discussion with not necessarily winning the point or winning the agenda, or maybe losing the negotiation, but we feel good about that dialogue, right? And we are like, I didn't get what I wanted, but boy, I had my say, and it was a good call. It was a good conversation, and we had a good discussion. So that's one situation. The second situation is you're having a casual interaction with someone. It's not adversarial. You just talking about something non-controversial or non-agenda based. But in like literally 5 to 10 minutes, you're like, someone save me, right? I can't bear to continue. And so the question is, why does that happen, right? It happens because in the first situation, despite what the agenda of the interaction is, we're having a very nice clicky flowy conversation because our conversational styles are interacting in a very complementary manner, and we're building natural rapport and affinity, even though we're actually trying to negotiate something which might not necessarily have the outcome we want. And in the other situation, it's the opposite, right? So previously, some of this stuff was simply, just not possible unless it's a clinical setting where you have psychologists analyze humans and get deep into their interaction styles and and conversational styles, and then make those decisions. So with AI, you could do that at scale, right? So now you have this capability that understands your unique conversational style, right? Which is almost as unique for you as, say, a fingerprint is. So that's why we call it the conversational bioprint. You can create that by processing a very brief previous interaction. And when you have that, you can make these intelligent decisions around who should be paired with who. And when you do that, you're the primary thing that you're solving for is bringing the two people together who are going to have a good conversation, essentially, and build rapport. And so all the other industry KPIs that are relevant, to the industry, for example, I would bucket that into two. One is the underlying sort of CX metrics, and the second would be outcomes. And you could have a specific outcome that you care about as a call center. You could care about, improving your sales revenue, or you could care about just collecting more debt. I mean, if it's a collections call center, or improving the overall experience, right? So all of those things get naturally impacted when you're having a great conversation. So the kind of things that we're impacting with specifically are on the CX side is reducing average handle time, improving first call resolution, improving the overall CX score, or you can think of this as a live NPS score in the moment. And then on the outcome side, it's really impacting various metrics such as improving debt collection, improving sales, and we're monitoring a double-digit impact on all of these metrics, which is 2 to 5 times higher than the industry averages, simply by bringing the right two people together and then letting them have a natural human interaction, which is very, very powerful, very magical, and and I think super excited about sort of the results that we're seeing in the industry.
And Anu, how do you go about taking kind of this technology and kind of selling it to your customers? What kind of language are you using when it comes to communicating the benefits of this partnership and these new capabilities that you're able to offer?
Sure. So I will start right from the top. What is the business outcome? Because that's really the biggest thing what our clients care about, and they are very focused on. So for us, we start with those metrics. And for us, the business outcome, leveraging the technology tools, what Behavioral Signals brings in, is largely driving the customer satisfaction scores or customer effectiveness scores, and more importantly, the larger, bigger objective, whether it's driving losses down. And in the use cases that we are seeing already, we are seeing a reduction in the collectible by 6%, and we can actually attach it right to what Rana was talking about. It's the right matching of the agent to the customer, and the tonality really matters. Especially think of in today's world, post-COVID, collections, you need empathy. This is not the old age of picking up the phone and starting your collections call and not caring about regulations. But now this is about empathy, building that support for the customer. And so much so that a lot of our customers that we see now, they call their collectors as financial support team. So there's an inbuilt empathy that they want to see in the customer. Now, a lot of it depends also on who's collecting, who are they talking to, the tonality, the voice, the sound, the intensity. And I think that's what we saw, what Behavioral Signals brought to the table. And when we take it to our customers, as I was talking earlier, we leverage a lot of our domain, a lot of our process knowledge, and a lot of the analytics that we have built together in really making sure that we are packaging it and delivering the right outcome. So that's what we have seen so far work beautifully here.
Nice. We do have a question here from Dimitri, which I'll pull up now. Somehow it's working now for some reason. How are we teaching the tone? I think it means tone of voice there. How are you training the models on this tone of voice? Do you have like you've done some training, presumably. You must have some profiles that you're trying to sort of match against, and then it's a process of understanding the audio, understanding the tone, matching it against a profile type. Is that broadly speaking correct? And if so, how did you get to the point of being able to identify and train the model to be able to correctly predict these personality types?
Yeah, I mean, it's an aspect of implementing various specific implementations of behavioral signal processing, and there's a lot that goes into it, right? So you have to sort of process thousands of utterances to essentially process a single insight, and you need to have a handle of many insights to actually process a single emotion. That might be, anger, happiness, or whatever that emotion that you're sort of going at it. And behavior is even more complicated because behaviors are also context-based, right? So if you're maybe acting in a certain way, that might be, the context is obviously relevant. I mean, that may or may not necessarily be problematic depending on the context. And so you have to understand the context. You have to build context modes. So typically, you're building these custom models for extracting these specific insights that are built on processing thousands of utterances. It's also built on various sort of work that has been done in psychology, where certain sort of elements emphasize certain aspects of emotional or behavioral state, and you're sort of leveraging that, and you're building custom models around that, and then you obviously have to train it on the right amount of data. And we've used both public data sets that are labeled and annotated and are proven to be accurate. And we've also built our own data sets. And specifically, when you're looking to solve for a specific industry problem, like, a technology like ours is very general purpose. I mean, you could apply it in a variety of different sectors. You could build many different companies out of it, right? But when you're building a specific products for call centers, then you have to work on call center data, and then you have to sort of build those specific models around, around sort of those particular insights that are relevant for the call center. And so, all of that goes into creating engine that can extract these signals real time. So it's a signal extraction real time. And the other thing to sort of think about is that, it's also sort of, focusing on various, specific contextual modalities, right? So when you're looking at solving for a particular outcome, let's say, whether improving for sales or collections, you'd have to have sort of those models for that domain very specific to the outcome that you're trying to improve. And so what we've been also able to do is we've been able to sort of, have multiple models work together in tandem and have the client, choose what they want to focus on. And the pairing that happens as a result, of that choice is very dynamic. I mean, you could tune that model real time based on what you're really looking to optimize. So I think, again, very sort of broad answer. There's a lot that goes into sort of extracting it. One more element, right? So when you're actually extracting a particular signal, you're really sort of looking at measuring a point of inflection from a baseline. And so let's say if you're trying to measure something which is similar to each other, let's say anger versus excitement, and they both might sound similar, but they're quite different. But they're both very distinct points of inflection from a baseline, and that baseline is shifting for different languages and different culture sets because they're tonal languages, they're non-tonal languages. And so you have to recalibrate that baseline for that culture set, for that language set, and sometimes for the domain. I mean, depending on what type of conversation that there is. And so you'd have to also solve for that, and you have to do it with little amounts of data. And so we've been able to now shrink it to 5 to 10 hours of data is all we really need to create a brand new baseline for a new culture set. So let's say if you start to deploy this in a country which uses unique elements of multiple languages. I mean, as is often the case in various Asian countries, you're speaking in, a mixture of different languages, and maybe there's a culture dialect or something like that. And you just need about 5 to 10 hours of data, feed that into the engines, it recalibrates it, and from there on, the signals are just as accurate as if were be, say, for US English or British English. So that's sort of like, all the stuff that goes behind the scenes in making this happen.
And you mentioned a couple of times there emotions like anger, excitement, stuff like that. Is that what you're trying to pick up on? Are you trying to pick up on anger, for example, and then saying, okay, we know that this person in the contact center is really good at handling someone who's angry and matching them that way? Or is there other things that you're also looking for to make that match happen?
Yeah, so we're actually doing a lot more than that, right? So when you're extracting the signals, you could sort of roughly bucket those signals in 3 categories. So the first would be emotions like anger, happiness, sadness, and there's a whole range of other signals, emotions that we can tap into. And then the second category would be behaviors. And so this is where you're trying to understand aspects such as engagement, empathy, politeness, among other things. Right. And then so these 2 buckets, these 2 categories are the building blocks of everything that, eventually the industry cares about. And the third bucket is really what the industry cares about, which is the KPIs that are relevant to a business. So stuff like customer experience, say live in the moment, or agent engagement, or other aspects of sort of satisfaction, etc. And so these are then custom classifiers that are leveraging these low-level signals towards a specific model that you built for that KPI. And you could also, build a model for intent to do something, intent to not do something. And we've built a few, primarily the 2 that we brought to market. One is propensity to pay, which is in debt collection, and second is propensity to buy, which is in a sales conversation, that you could also extract live in the moment, right, as the interaction's happening. And so then, when you're building a specific product like the AIMC pairing engine that we have, which is what we're bringing to market with a Genpact partnership, that is leveraging all of that science, all of that technology, but in a unique manner, right? So it's not necessarily just doing raw signal interaction and throwing it on a dashboard for a real-time assist, nor is it really looking at the in-the-moment mood or the emotion to make that decision, right? So it's not necessarily tapping into how you're feeling in the moment to decide who you should be talking to. But in a sense, what it's trying to do, it's based on your previous interactions, it has already sort of figured out your larger conversational dynamic, your larger conversational style. And so with that, we have a pretty good understanding of how Ken Sims usually converses. It's a factor of, so that conversational profile is really a vector file of 75 to 100 attributes that range from various aspects of how you speak and converse, like how fast you speak, to various emotional, behavioral states you exude in a conversation. And then you combine it together, we have a good sense of how you converse. And that's more at a macro level, not really in the moment mood that you may be feeling. You still leverage that, but that's not the primary driver, right? So then you use that to find a partner for you that matches that conversational style, and then you're connected with that agent, and you're bound to have a much better conversation than you would in a call center that's not using a technology.
Nice and interesting. So from your perspective, Anu, how do you go about implementing that? Is this just an API that you put into your kind of toolkit and you kind of go ahead with it? Is there more configuration that's required? Like, let's say a client knocks on your door today and says, we want to do this. What's kind of involved from your side to kind of get this up and running?
Sure. And I'm just going to add a little bit to the previous question, which Rana was answering. And just in terms of matching to agents, I think one big component, of course, from, how do you see tone? What we also then attach to it when we take it to our customers is the behavior of this customer through the past history, how soon, and I'm just talking all in context of collections right now. What are some of the analytics we have had in the past for this customer? How do they always pay on the first month or a first day? Do they always resist, bring in? So we also check the pattern and through our analytics. We also then create, our outlook or our, predictive through what data we are analyzing on their past behavior. So with that combination, and the combination of what we can see from tone brings that very effective match of that agent, which then delivers a higher collectible. So that's how we will then, break the outcome for our customers when we take the tool to them. To your question on so what happens when a customer is good with the tool. So we, as I said, we take it as a combination, and typically it's actually a very easy tool to implement. From what I've seen so far, Rana, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 6-week 7-week implementation. I think your tool have open architecture. It's very easy to implement, so we haven't had the challenge. Of course, it all has to be done in the realm of our customers data privacy and all the security elements, which we always take care. This is always in consultation with wherever the customer agrees to. We take prior approval. So all that is done post that, but it's a very, very, very easy and very seamless implementation. And we are already going through one of those right now.
Nice. Anything to add on to that, Rana?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for mentioning that, Anu. So I think, one of the biggest value adds of our technology is that it is really minimalistic from a point of integration standpoint, right? So we really have at a very high level 2 points of integration: one with an audio source, second with a dialer or a router, depending on sort of how the setup is at a call center, if it's inbound or outbound or both. And we make that happen through a variety of partner integrations, such as like Genesys and AWS, Amazon Connect, and TalkTest, etc. But outside of that, it's a capability that can be quickly delivered in a matter of weeks. And it runs behind the scenes. You don't really need any human intervention or complex monitoring. Or God forbid, data scientist assigned to it to continue to get value out of it, right? It's extracting intelligence on current and previous conversations, creating profiles, updating them, putting that into a predictive index to create a match list. Those match lists are pre-populated in the database all the time, and it's updated all the time. And the next conversation that needs to happen, it looks up and then it reroutes. And so none of that requires human intervention. And it is something that can be run at scale, and both on-premise, on the cloud, depending on clients' data privacy requirements. It's got that flexibility as well. And the best part is that it is purely focused on tone, which means we're not really, creating, personally identifying content, such as spoken word and all the things that come out of that, right? So it's very GDPR friendly. There's, not a lot of redaction to deal with because there's no text to redact. And that is becoming increasingly important, right? So you have many technologies that create value, but you can't really tap into that value because it creates other problems, and you have to then deal with the problem, and then the complexity outweighs the benefit, right? So if you can deliver this in a manner that is, secure and it's private, and it doesn't necessarily create a lot of data issues, then that's a huge win. And I think, so that's where, that's also where we're learning a lot through the Genpact experience. Genpact has amazing experience and expertise in many, many complex deliveries around the globe with large partners. And so working in tandem with Genpact, we're continuously sort of trying to see, where else we need to tweak the system. And also what other value adds we need to build around it, which is a great benefit, because we have access to these clients who are really sort of very savvy to begin with, that that they have experience with a lot of relevant technology. So we're getting great feedback in terms of how could this be better? What else can we add to it? Where else can we take this? So yeah, I mean, I think all of that is hugely impactful, and we're really thankful for that.
I suppose the two bits that are kind of still gaps in my understanding would be, let's say I'm a contact center and I want to implement this. I understand how you could take an audio signal, feed that to behavioral signals. You can then process that. But then two things seemingly need to happen. One is that behavioral signals needs to somehow get information from that audio stream back to the contact center to then say, this is the agent that you should select for this person. Am I thinking about that correctly? And then two is, how do you visualize the outcome of the kind of classification, so to speak? So maybe the first part, we'll start with the first part. If I'm a contact center and I implement this and I want to do tone of voice analysis, so then I can then route calls to the most appropriate agent for that particular caller. How does, I understand a bit which will get the audio signal to behavioral signals. How do you then get that insight back to the contact center for it to be able to take an action?
Yeah, and maybe I'll take a stab at it, and then maybe Anu can add to it from a Genpact perspective. But let's just walk through a typical implementation, right? So a call center who wants to use our technology would first do a proof of value or a pilot process with us, where we would test out both the implementation and various aspects of tuning and configuration. And what happens in that is we'd start with their last X months of call center data, anywhere from 2 months to 3 months, depending on, and that accompanies the call center data, accompanies with it various relevant metadata that's pertaining to the outcomes that they're trying to focus on, right? So for example, let's say the goal is, hey, we want to do a CX lift, or we want to improve collections. Well, the question is, well, how are you tracking it today? Because we would really like to do an A/B test, apples to orange, apples to apples, from a perspective of, okay, here's where you are today, and let's see how much can we improve it. So we need to sort of do the before and after. And so you take the calls, you run it through our engines. First off, like from a deployment standpoint, as I said, you have two choices, right? So we have our full AI, implementation on our cloud, which is on secure, cloud. It could be a choice of AWS or Azure. The client chooses. We're agnostic. Or it could be deployed on the client's cloud, private cloud. And which means that the data never leaves their firewall. So we don't really have to have the client use our cloud, and it could be deployed completely within their firewall on their private virtual cloud, or within their data centers. And for the most part, a lot of the financial institutions choose that because they have contractual requirements of data never leaving their possession or firewall, right? And so they just simply can't do it. So when you deploy it in their setup, and then you process all these previous interactions, let's say last 3 months, and what happens through that is every call gets processed, and you then result in a profile for each client that you've interacted with up till that time. And also every agent that you have, in your call center at that time. And so that's a good enough starting point for us to start with. And then those profiles are fed into a predictive index, and the matches get created. And that's it. The system's ready to go, right? And so from that point on, I mean, you've made a point of connection to an audio source, which means the next call gets processed literally right after the call ends. You also have an integration point into a dialer where the next incoming call gets routed based on the conversational match that the AIMC technology makes possible. And so from there on, everything just sort of happens behind the scenes. I mean, there's really nothing else to do thereon. We're never at no point in possession of the actual calls, or they're not really pulling those insights from the behavioral signals clouds. Everything is happening on the client side. Those profiles are being created and the matches are being created on the client side, and the routing and the implementations is happening on the client side. And then we offer a full-on dashboard where you could actually see the impact. You could monitor it. You could tune your variables. You could choose to focus on a different KPI. You could, say that, I'd like to, I've had a great lift on the collection side, but I'm now focusing on customer experience. And so, that make that the primary metric. And that would affect how the matches are created. And then you would see an impact on that particular metric. And so all of those things are self-serve. In client's possession, we don't really need to sort of know. I mean, some of those are private information, private data, and some of those aspects of metadata are extremely confidential as well. And so all of that just sort of can be done in a very seamless fashion. Maybe Anu wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of points. Rana, you covered it very well. I would just over-index on two things. One is data security, and I think that's something which is paramount for all our customers. Good news about this is there is no PII data used here. It's not about what you say, it's how you say it. So I think that's really the great part about this. And second thing is it's done really in a very collaborative way with our customers, and how Rana explained, we take the sample, look at the data, match the agents, and then we also have our own proprietary tools wherein we actually monitor and see what is the end result, what's the end outcome, and how that end outcome is different. The way we were explaining about the collectible dollar collected, we monitor the agent performance on several attributes through our tools, and we're able to very quickly quantify at a portfolio level how much losses hence we are able to contain. So those are some of the clear benefits, clear outcomes we are able to derive and link back into the tool.
So am I understanding this correctly then, which is that a phone call comes in, it hits either an IVR or something like that, or maybe there's a voice assistant there which will say, how can I help you? Because you need to get an audio signal, presumably from the user, before you can match them with the appropriate agent. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it sits on top of, skills-based routing implementation or an IVR implementation. Typically, so for example, let's say, a client's calling in. The first thing you need to do is identify who the caller is. And you do that from the client's interaction with the IVR. And the client generally identifies himself or herself really quickly by choosing a certain prompt or giving, from the phone number or your customer ID. That's usually the first level of interaction. As soon as that happens, that customer is identified. If there's a profile that exists for the customer, that gets pulled up, and the match list gets pulled up. And then the client continues to interact with the IVR, and once the skills-based routing determines which department the client needs to be routed to, within that department, you're looking through a match list, and then you're trying to find the first available agent in that match list. So let's say you have 10 agents matched to you, and the first one's 95% match. You're going to try to get to that agent first. If the agent happens to be not available, then you go down that list. Eventually call gets routed based on that. And all of this just, it's like a split second, doesn't really take a lot of time. And then that interaction that the client is having or will have with that agent gets immediately processed right after the call. What happens after that call ends is the profiles that exist for that agent and that client gets refreshed and updated based on the interaction that just happened, right? And so every interaction refreshes that profile, and you are smarter and getting smarter and more knowledgeable about the conversational dynamics of these two people. And typically what we see is, by the way, that you don't really need to process. First of all, we don't need a long interaction to create a profile, right? So you just need a about 2-minute interaction between two people to create a profile for both. But also, you don't need to process more than, say, 3 interactions. After the third interaction, we've seen that if we have more than enough of what we will ever need. And so we don't really need to process the 4th or the 5th or the 6th interaction typically. But that's basically it. So a call comes in, it gets routed. And in an outbound setup, it's slightly different, right? Let's say it's a collections call center where the agent's actually calling the client. And typically, the agent would get a call list, right? Which hear the customers that you've been assigned to call. And typically, that is also random today in some ways, but if you're using AIMC, they're not random. That list has been carefully curated, generated by AI for that particular agent. And so when the agent logs into their dashboard in their CRM system, and you have a list of clients that the agent needs to call, that has been very carefully curated and selected specifically for that agent based on the agent's conversational style and profile and those clients' conversational style and profiles. And then the agent calls them. And so you see a massive lift through that. And that's typically how the outbound system works. Now, I want to address this as well, because it's a common question that comes up, which is, well, what happens to a client that's calling in that has never called in before? Because obviously we don't have the profile for that client because you've never spoken with that client. And so 2 things happen, right? So one, you're routing that client. So it's still, not just being a random redirection to a group of agents in that situation. In that situation, you carefully curated and pre-selected a group of agents that have somewhat of a neutral conversational profile, and they're best suited for most people. So think of this as a O positive, for conversational style standpoint. And so you're routing those calls to those group of agents, and it's still better than random, and you see a much better interaction. And subsequent calls, the second call is a 1-to-1 match, right? So it's not a group; it's like 1-to-1 personal match. And but we're also working on an implementation that will allow us to create a profile within seconds, just through the interaction with the IVR that typically will only last a few seconds. And so what potentially you would be able to do is you have a client calling in, and just by the interaction that the client's having for the very first time with the machine, with the IVR, you can tap into those very small utterances, and you can create a profile for the client, and then quickly do the matching, create a predictive index, and then match the client with that particular agent. You don't have this problem on the agent side. You'll always have a profile for the agents. So it's just typically that. But last bit on that is, typically, the first-time caller percentages are range from anywhere from on the high side to you have 60% of the callers are first-time callers, to on the low side maybe like 10% are first-time callers. So that's the range. What we have seen is that even when you're implementing this in the low-end situation where most of your callers are actually the high end, I guess, it gets the opposite here, are first-time callers, which means you have very few first-time interactions. You're still creating a massive lift, and you're still creating close to a double-digit impact on the KPIs. And that just gets better if you have more than first-time interactions. And, at the end of the day, I mean, you're only going to have 1 or 2 shots at maximizing what you want to get done through that particular client interaction, and you have to make it count. And this is what we're really aiming for, really improving the first call resolution, trying to make sure that the next call doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, I'm with
Sorry
you.
for the long answer.
No, it's good. It's good. I understand it now. So basically what happens is a caller calls up, you need to do some sort of authentication, either network authentication or some kind of customer lookup based on the phone number they're calling from. Because you've ingested historic call data, you're able to then understand what kind of profile, for want of a better word, matches that customer. Then you can route them to the right agent. The first-time callers, then once they've had that first interaction, is it afterwards you can then create a profile for them? so that next time they call, you've got a profile? Is that how it's working, or did you say
Exactly.
you need 2 or 3 interactions to do that?
No, you just need one interaction to create a profile.
So
Yeah.
what's the challenge? What's the challenge? Obviously, it's a challenge, otherwise you'd have already done it. So what's the challenge in doing that real time? What's the barriers preventing
So
that from happening?
yeah, so I mean, I think the challenge is really essentially extracting enough intelligence, or signals with very small amounts of data. So you know, you have more than enough if the interaction is about a minute, minute and a half in length. But to do it real time, which would be actually an interaction with the IVR, right? I mean, so in order to actually solve for this, to have that match happen for someone who's never called in, you'd have to do it with the IVR interaction, and that's just a few seconds. And we're actually very close to solving that. And in that situation, you'd have a situation where a client calls in, and just with that 10 to 20 seconds of interaction that the client has with the IVR, creates a profile and creates that first profile, and you're matched one-on-one in that first interaction itself. That definitely will be better than routing it to the neutral group of agents. But yeah, it's very close.
I get it. I can imagine that being very difficult, to be honest. Like, because even if you were to try and capture some audio in the IVR, you're gonna say something like, "How can I help you?" And then they're gonna say, "I need to pay my debt," and that's it. Then you're gonna have to route them to the right agent. Or if you put them into an assisted conversation, automated conversation, you might get a bit more data if you try and get them to go, okay, so what's your, reference number, and how much do you owe, and do you want to pay today or pay next week? You can get them to say a bit more if you can get them through an
Bit more.
automated conversation, but you're not really still going to get you're not going to get minutes worth of audio, really, because it's going to be, I can imagine that being quite a challenge.
Yeah, but I mean, the good thing is we don't really need minutes anymore. I mean, we've gotten down to 15, 20, 30 seconds.
Okay.
So it's now possible.
Okay, that's interesting. Cool, wicked. Well, that's unbelievable. So I'm just pulling up now some links that people might want to go and take a look at. And sorry, we've run over a little bit. I was just keen to there was one little gap in my understanding there towards the end, and I'm glad that we managed to sort that out, which makes perfect sense. Cool. So thank you, Rana. Thank you, Anu, very much for joining us. It's been absolutely perfect. Any final closing thoughts, Anu?
No, I think all I would say is it's all about, I call it the BCDE of experience. It's the business experience, customer experience, digital experience, and finally, I also call it employee experience. And I think behavioral signal probably checks the boxes and all.
Cool. Fantastic. Thank you very much. If people want to learn more, you can go to genpact.com, genpact.com, if you want to learn more about Genpact. And Rana, any final closing thoughts from your perspective?
No, I'd say, just to be very candid, right? So just having a great technology that creates value is apparently not enough, right? You have to solve for how that value gets delivered to a client. And that's hard. That's very, very hard, right? And so you'd think that, building technology is hard. And that's why we're so thankful to partner with the experts in this field, right? And Genpact does this better than anybody else I've seen, right? And so we're really, really thankful to be working very closely with the Genpact team to take this and then get it to and solve for that implementation and the delivery and sort of a piece so that the clients can actually benefit from this in a safe, secure manner. So I really, really looking forward to what else are we going to be doing in the near future.
Perfect. Wicked. Well, thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't registered for our webinar next week yet, do that. It's called Into the Black Hole Ooh, the metrics that matter for measuring chatbot performance. You can go to VUX.world, click on the events tab, you can register there. And also, if you haven't got your tickets for Unparsed yet, please do that as well. It's the world's first conversation design conference in person in London in July. It's going to be absolutely epic. Unparsedconf.com, promo code VUXWorld to save yourself 50%. Anu, Rana, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to doing the next one. Maybe when there's been, maybe it's in a few months' time or half a year's time, something like that. When we've got a lot more data, we can kind of pull up. We'll definitely be glad to have you both back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.